In the quiet town of Summit Falls, security cameras captured the moment struggling single dad, Alan Garrett, transformed from an ordinary janitor into a precise fighting machine during a violent armed robbery at Parker's Corner Mart. This apparently ordinary man neutralized 3 armed attackers in under 4 minutes, saving 17 hostages without a single civilian casualty. Law enforcement and military investigators discovered the stunning truth. This forgotten father living paycheck to paycheck was actually Phantom, an elite Delta Force operator whose death had been officially recorded 5 years earlier. Tonight, we reveal how one man's classified past became his small town salvation, and how the deadly skills that once made him America's most lethal weapon now serve a more personal mission, protecting the daughter and community he's come to. Love. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The alarm clock blared at 5 a.m. in the small, sparsely furnished apartment on the east side of Summit Falls. Alan Garrett's hand moved automatically to silence it before the sound could wake his 12-year-old daughter in the next room. He sat up slowly, wincing as his back protested. Another night of fragmented sleep, interrupted by the same dreamless dread that had haunted him for years. Through the thin walls, he could hear Rachel's steady breathing. The peaceful sound centered him, as it did every morning. For her, he would get up. For her, he would push through another day. The mirror revealed a face that had aged beyond its 38 years, deep lines around the eyes, a 3-day stubble he couldn't be bothered to shave, and a jagged scar above his right eyebrow that he couldn't remember getting. The gaps in his memory remained the most troubling part of his existence. Alan dressed quickly in faded jeans and a worn flannel shirt, then moved to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Their routine was precise. Oatmeal for Rachel with cinnamon, and the last of the brown sugar, black coffee for himself. He packed her lunch, carefully counting out the remaining lunch money for the week. "Dad?" Rachel appeared in the doorway, already dressed in jeans and a purple sweater, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. "You didn't sleep again." It wasn't a question. At 12, she noticed too much, worried too much. She'd grown up too fast after Caroline died. "I'm fine, kiddo." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just some back pain. Nothing that'll slow me down." She approached, studying his face with an intensity that reminded him of her mother. "You had the dreams again." Alan placed a bowl of oatmeal on the table. "Eat up. You've got that math test today." The change of subject was clumsy, but Rachel allowed it. She sat down and began eating, still watching him with concern. "I can stay home if you need me to," she offered. "Mrs. Peterson wouldn't mind if I made up the test tomorrow." "Not a chance. Education first, that's the rule." He ruffled her hair, the gesture awkward but sincere. "I've got maintenance work at the community center till 3, then I'm covering for Sam at the hardware store till 6. Mrs. Perez will check on you after school." Rachel nodded, used to the complicated scheduling that kept food on their table and a roof over their heads. "I can make dinner tonight. Spaghetti." "Sounds perfect." He glanced at his watch. "Bus comes in 15 minutes. Don't forget your permission. Slip for the museum." After Rachel left, Alan's facade crumbled slightly. The headache that had been building since he woke intensified. He opened the cabinet above the refrigerator and retrieved an unmarked pill bottle Dr. Wilson had given him. The doctor called them anxiety medication, but Alan suspected they were something stronger. Still, they kept the tremors at bay, subdued the flashes of memory that sometimes overwhelmed him. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks at the community center, fixing leaky pipes, replacing broken light fixtures, mopping floors. The physical labor helped quiet his mind. By noon, his muscles ached with satisfying fatigue, and for a few precious hours, he felt almost normal. His phone buzzed at 2:30 p.m., a text from Rachel. "Got an A on my test. Mrs. Perez made cookies to celebrate." A genuine smile crossed his face. As he typed back, "That's my girl, save me one." At 3:15, he arrived at Miller's Hardware, nodding to Stan as he took his position behind the counter. The afternoon crowd was sparse, a few contractors picking up supplies, Mrs. Jenkins buying paint for her bathroom renovation, the usual Tuesday regulars. "Alan, you look like hell," Stan observed bluntly, his bushy white eyebrows furrowing. "Doc Wilson's still got you on those meds." "They help," Alan replied, not meeting his employer's eyes. "Help keep you numb, maybe." Stan crossed his arms. "Veterans Administration called, said you missed your appointment again." Alan stiffened. "I was working." "They can help with the PTSD, son. They've got programs. I don't have PTSD." The words came out sharper than intended. "Just some trouble sleeping. It's under control." Stan looked unconvinced but dropped the subject. "Need you to deliver these pipe fittings to the Parker place before closing. Their kitchen sink's been out all week." "Parker's Corner Mart." Alan asked, taking the package. "Yeah, Gina's good people. Been managing that store alone since her husband passed. Boy's heading to college next year. Scholarship to state." Alan nodded, grateful for the change of subject. "I'll head over after my shift." At 5:45, Alan loaded the pipe fittings into his truck. The vehicle, like everything else he owned, was held together with determination and makeshift repairs. He texted Rachel that he'd be home by 6:30 and headed toward Parker's Corner Mart on the edge of town. The sun was setting as he pulled into the small parking lot of the convenience store. Through the large front windows, he could see a handful of customers inside. Gina Parker was behind the counter, her son Josh stocking shelves in the back. An elderly couple, the Jenkins, Alan recognized, were browsing the canned goods section. Something made Alan pause before getting out of the truck. A dark SUV with tinted windows was parked on the street corner, engine running. 3 men sat inside, faces obscured. Something about their posture, their stillness, triggered a faint alarm in the back of his mind. He shook his head, trying to clear it. The medication made him paranoid sometimes, seeing threats where there were none. He grabbed the package and headed for the store entrance. The bell chimed as he entered. Gina looked up with a tired smile that didn't quite mask the stress lines around her eyes. "Alan, right? From the community center?" "Yes, ma'am. Brought those pipe fittings Stan promised. For your sink." "Thank God. Been washing dishes in the bathroom. For a week." She gestured toward the back. "Josh can show you where they go. We close in 15, but take your time." Alan nodded and started toward the back where Josh was organizing inventory. The teenager looked up at his approach, about to speak, when the bell over the door chimed again. 3 men entered, and everything in Alan's body went rigid. They moved with deliberate purpose, scanning the store layout, noting exits, evaluating threats. The leader, tall, with close-cropped hair and a military bearing, made eye contact with Alan for a split second. In that moment, something shifted in Alan's perception. His vision seemed to sharpen, his hearing intensify. The background noise of the store faded as he catalogued details with automatic precision. 3 men, concealed weapons, tactical positions, 7 civilians in the store. The leader nodded slightly. To his companions, "Everybody down, now!" The man's voice rang through the store as he pulled a handgun from beneath his jacket. The other 2 men followed suit, one moving toward the register, the other covering the customers. Screams erupted. Mrs. Jenkins collapsed against a shelf. Josh froze mid-motion. Gina's hand moved toward the panic button beneath the counter. "Don't even think about it," the leader warned, training his weapon on her. "Hands where I can see them." Time seemed to slow for Alan. His breathing steadied, his heart rate calming rather than accelerating. The package dropped from his suddenly limp fingers as his body assumed a relaxed but balanced stance. "Hey! You!" The second gunman had noticed Alan's strange calm. On the ground, Alan's voice emerged steady and quiet. "You don't want to do this. Shut up and get down." The man advanced, waving his gun. Alan remained still, head slightly tilted, assessing. In his mind, calculations were running. Distance, angles, response times. Information he shouldn't know, training he couldn't remember having. Last chance, hero. The gunman was within arm's reach now. "There are children present," Alan said softly. "Walk away now." The gunman laughed, grabbing Alan's shoulder to force him down. It was the last mistake he would make that day. Alan's hand moved in a blur, gripping the man's wrist and twisting. The crack of bone was followed by a howl of pain as the gun clattered to the floor. In the same fluid motion, Alan drove his elbow into the man's sternum, then swept his legs from under him. The second attacker turned, raising his weapon. Alan was already moving, dropping low and driving forward in a controlled tackle that slammed the man against the freezer door. The impact shattered the glass, and Alan delivered a precise strike to the nerve cluster at the base of the man's neck. The gunman collapsed into unconsciousness. The leader's weapon swung toward Alan, who grabbed a can from a nearby shelf and hurled it with deadly accuracy. The can struck the man's hand, sending the gun skittering across the floor. Before the leader could react, Alan closed the distance between them. "Who sent you?" Alan demanded, his voice now carrying a cold authority that hadn't been there moments before. The leader's eyes widened in shock. "You're supposed to be dead." Alan hesitated, confusion flashing across his face. The moment's distraction was enough for the leader to pull a hidden knife. He slashed wildly, opening a cut on Alan's forearm. The pain cleared Alan's mind. His response was immediate and devastating, a series of strikes targeting pressure points and nerve clusters. The leader crumpled, unconscious before he hit the floor. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 2 minutes. Silence fell over the store. The customers stared in shock. Gina Parker stood frozen behind the counter, her finger now firmly on the panic button. Alan stood in the center of the carnage, breathing evenly. Blood dripped from his arm, but he seemed unaware of it. His posture had changed completely, shoulders squared, head up, scanning for additional threats with practiced efficiency. "Dad!" Josh's voice broke the silence. "How did you... What did you..." But Alan couldn't answer. He was staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. Memory fragments were surfacing. Desert heat, night vision operations, the weight of tactical gear, voices on comm units. "Secure the perimeter," he muttered, then shook his head in confusion. "I mean, someone should lock the door. Police. We'll be here soon." Mrs. Jenkins was the first to find her voice. "Alan Garrett, you saved our lives." She moved toward him, but Alan stepped back, suddenly wary. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him disoriented and alarmed by what he had just done. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Through the window, Alan could see the dark SUV speeding away. The getaway driver had seen everything and was now escaping with the story of what had happened. "Oh my God, you're bleeding," Gina said, coming around the counter with a clean towel. "It's nothing." Alan's voice sounded strange to his own ears, clipped, professional, assessing. "Superficial laceration, no arterial involvement." She stopped, staring at him. "Where did you learn to do that? Those men had guns and you moved like..." "I don't know," Alan said honestly, the confusion evident in his eyes. "I don't remember." The first police car pulled into the parking lot, lights flashing. Officer Pete Collins emerged, weapon drawn. Through the window, he surveyed the scene. 3 unconscious men on the floor, customers huddled in corners, and Alan Garrett standing in the middle, blood dripping from his arm. Alan raised his hands slowly. "Officer, these men attempted to rob the store. The situation is contained." His tone was measured, authoritative, the voice of a man used to giving situation reports, not the struggling handyman the town knew. As Collins cautiously entered, followed by 2 more officers, Alan felt something shift inside him. Memories were surfacing now, fragments of another life, classified briefings, desert operations, code names, and blood. "So much blood, Rachel," he whispered, suddenly remembering his daughter waiting at home. "I need to call my daughter." Sheriff Stanley Edwards arrived, taking in the scene with a practiced eye. His gaze lingered on Alan, narrowing slightly as if seeing him for the first time. "Mr. Garrett," the sheriff said slowly, "I think you've got some explaining to do." Alan looked down at the 3 incapacitated men, then at his own hands, still perfectly steady, despite everything that had happened. "I wish I could," he replied quietly, "but I think I need some answers myself. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The fluorescent lights of the Summit Falls police station buzzed overhead as Alan sat in the interview room, a bandage wrapped around his forearm where the knife had cut him. The adrenaline had long since faded, replaced by a deep unease. The clock on the wall read 9:17 p.m. Rachel would be worried sick. Sheriff Edwards entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. He placed one in front of Alan without a word, then took the seat across from him. "Called the Perez family," Edwards said finally. "They'll keep Rachel overnight. Told her you had to help with an emergency at the store." Alan nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you. Got your statement from Officer Collins." Edwards opened a folder. "What I'm trying to figure out is how a maintenance worker and part-time hardware store clerk took down 3 armed men without breaking a sweat." Alan stared into his coffee. "I don't know what to tell you." "Try the truth. That is the truth." Alan looked up, his expression troubled. "I don't know how I did what I did. It just happened, like muscle memory." Edwards leaned back, studying him. "You served?" "Army, 6 years. Honorable discharge." The words came automatically. "Practiced." "What unit?" Alan hesitated. "Regular infantry, nothing special." "See, that's where things get interesting." Edwards pulled a paper from the folder. "Because I just got off the phone with the Army. According to their records, Alan Garrett served 4 years, not 6. Regular infantry, just like you said. Discharged after a vehicle accident in Germany." He paused. "Nothing in your file about combat training advanced enough to disarm 3 attackers without a weapon." The headache was returning, pounding behind Alan's eyes. "I don't understand." "That makes 2 of us." Edwards slid a photograph across the table. "One of the men you subdued tonight, Marshall Lewis, dishonorable discharge from the Army Rangers. 3 years ago. Since then, he's been working as muscle for a regional drug distribution network." Alan studied the photo, feeling a faint sense of recognition that he couldn't place. "He regained consciousness about an hour ago," Edwards continued. "First thing he said was, 'It's not possible. Phantom is dead.'" The word sent a jolt through Alan's system. Phantom. The name triggered something, a flash of memory, gone before he could grasp it. "Mean anything to you?" Edwards asked, watching his reaction closely. "No," Alan lied, his heart racing. "Maybe it's a code name they use." "That's what I figured." Edwards didn't sound convinced. "Until I ran your prints." Alan went very still. "System. Came back with nothing at first. Then I got a call from a federal agent asking why I was looking for a dead man." Edwards leaned forward. "Who are you really, Garrett?" Before Alan could respond, the door opened. A woman in a crisp suit entered, flashing credentials. "Agent Diana Foster, Department of Defense. I need to speak with Mr. Garrett alone, Sheriff." Edwards stood slowly. "This is my jurisdiction," Agent. Foster, 3 armed robbers in my jail, 7 witnesses. This is a matter of national security, she interrupted, her tone leaving no room for argument. You'll be fully briefed when appropriate. After a tense silence, Edwards nodded curtly and left the room. Foster closed the door behind him and took the seat he had vacated. You don't remember me, do you? She asked. Alan studied her face. Nothing. Should I? Afghanistan, 2015. You pulled my team out after our position was compromised. She watched him carefully. Your call sign was Phantom. The headache intensified. Alan pressed his fingers against his temples. I was never in Afghanistan. Your memories were deliberately suppressed, Foster explained, her voice softening slightly, after the Colombia operation went sideways. I don't know what you're talking about, but even as he said it, fragments were emerging, jungle heat, the rapid staccato of gunfire, blood-soaked earth. Foster removed a small device from her pocket and placed it on the table. She pressed a button, and a low hum filled the room. Jammer, now we can talk freely. She leaned forward. You were one of our most effective Delta Force operators, specialized in hostage extraction and high-value target elimination. The best we'd ever seen. Alan shook his head, but the motion made the pain worse. That's not me. I'm a maintenance worker. I have a daughter. Yes, Rachel. Foster nodded. Born to you and Caroline Garrett. That part is real. What do you mean, that part? 5 years ago, a mission in Colombia went catastrophically wrong. Your entire team was ambushed. Official records show you died there. Alan's breathing quickened. I'm sitting right here. You were critically injured, Foster continued. Physical trauma, severe concussion. When you regained consciousness, you had significant memory loss. The agency saw an opportunity. What opportunity? Alan's voice had hardened, a clean slate. Your identity was adjusted. Certain memories were suppressed through targeted medication and therapy. You were given a new life, one that would keep both you and national security protected. She paused. The man you were was considered too valuable an asset to lose, but too dangerous to remain in play if compromised. Alan's hands clenched into fists. You're saying my entire life is a lie, that some government agency erased who I was and replaced it with this? Not your entire life. Your marriage was real. Rachel is your daughter. Caroline's death from a cancer was tragic but natural. Foster's expression remained professionally neutral. But yes, aspects of your identity were reconstructed after Colombia. The medication from Dr. Wilson, Foster nodded. Memory suppressants designed to keep certain neural pathways dormant. Your combat training, tactical knowledge, classified information, all buried but not erased. Until tonight, Alan said, quietly. Until tonight, Foster agreed. The threat triggered your training. Once activated, those pathways will be increasingly difficult to suppress. The implications were staggering. Alan tried to process what she was saying, but the headache made coherent thought difficult. Why are you telling me this now? Because Marshal Lewis recognized you, Foster said grimly, and his associates will be extremely interested to learn that Phantom is alive. The same people who ambushed your team in Colombia now know where to find you. Alan's thoughts immediately went to Rachel. My daughter is already under protection. A team was dispatched to the Perez residence as soon as we identified you. Alan stood abruptly. I need to see her now. Sit down, Garrett. Foster's tone was commanding. There are protocols. I don't care about your protocols. His voice had changed again, deeper, more authoritative. You people erased my life, pumped me full of drugs, and now you're telling me my daughter is in danger because of something I don't even remember doing. Foster studied him for a moment, then nodded. You'll be taken to a secure location. Rachel will meet you there, but first... She reached into her jacket and removed a small case. Inside was a syringe. Alan stepped back. What is that? The counteragent to your suppression medication. It will accelerate the return of your memories and training. She held it out. You're going to need it. And if I refuse, that's your right. But without your full capabilities, I can't guarantee Rachel's safety. Foster's expression softened slightly. I'm not the enemy here, Alan. None of this was my call. But now that Lewis has identified you, things have been set in motion that can't be stopped. Alan stared at the syringe, torn between fear of what he might remember and the need to protect his daughter. Finally, he extended his arm. Do it. Foster administered the injection with practiced efficiency. It will take a few hours to fully counteract the suppressants. You'll experience disorientation, possibly nausea. Memories will return in fragments initially. Alan barely heard her. Already he could feel something changing, neural pathways reconnecting, dormant synapses firing, names, faces, missions, all rising to the surface in a chaotic flood. We need to move, Foster said, gathering her things. Transport is waiting. Alan followed her from the room, his gait already changing, more balanced, more predatory. Sheriff Edwards was waiting in the hallway, his expression a mixture of suspicion and concern. You're releasing him? Edwards asked Foster. Mr. Garrett is coming with me, she replied smoothly. His cooperation is vital to an ongoing federal investigation. Edwards turned to Alan. You okay with this? The question surprised Alan. Despite the circumstances, the sheriff seemed genuinely concerned for his welfare. I need to get to Rachel, he said simply. Edwards nodded slowly. Whatever's going on here, Garrett, you saved lives tonight. Don't forget that. I won't. Alan extended his hand, which Edwards shook firmly. The feds take you somewhere you don't. Want to go? You call me, the sheriff said quietly. I still run things in Summit Falls. Foster led Alan to a black SUV waiting outside. As they drove through the darkened streets of Summit Falls, Alan watched the familiar landmarks pass by. The community center where he'd spent countless hours doing repairs, the school where Rachel studied, the park where they'd spent Sunday. Afternoons. Had any of it been real, or was it all an elaborate cover for whatever he'd been before? Your daughter will be brought to the safe house within the hour, Foster said, breaking the silence. A go-bag with essential supplies has already been prepared. What happens after tonight? Alan asked. That depends on what we're dealing with. Foster kept her eyes on the road. Lewis works for Eugene Watson. Watson's organization has connections to the same cartel that ambushed your team in Colombia. The cartel I supposedly died fighting. Yes. Foster glanced at him. Memories coming. Back yet? Fragments were surfacing. Faces, locations, code names. Nothing coherent, just pieces of a puzzle still taking shape. Some, not enough. It will take time. But your instincts are intact, as you demonstrated tonight. They turned onto a rural road leading into the hills outside Summit Falls. The SUV's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating dense forest on either side. Your team, Alan said suddenly, a memory surfacing. In Afghanistan. Lieutenant Ramirez, Specialist Chen, the ambush near Kandahar. Foster's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You remember. Pieces. Alan pressed his fingers against his temples. You were pinned down. 3 insurgents with RPGs on the ridge. I came in from the east, used the irrigation ditch for cover. You took out all 3 without making a sound, Foster confirmed. Saved my entire team. The road narrowed as they climbed higher into the foothills. Alan's tactical awareness, dormant for so long, was now fully engaged. He noted defensible positions, possible ambush points, escape routes, all automatically catalogued. We're almost there, Foster said, turning onto an unmarked dirt road. The headlights revealed a modest cabin set back among the trees, its windows dark. Foster parked beside a second vehicle already there. Wait here, she ordered, drawing her weapon. Something's wrong. The transport team should have external lights on. Alan said, the knowledge coming from somewhere deep in his training. Standard protocol for secure handoff. Foster nodded, surprised. Stay in the car. But Alan was already moving, exiting the vehicle in a fluid motion that kept the SUV between himself and the cabin. His body was remembering things his mind still it couldn't fully access. Tactical positioning, threat assessment, silent movement. Foster whispered into her radio. Overwatch, status report. The silence that followed was answer enough. Compromise, Alan said quietly, crouching beside her. Rachel? Not here yet. Second team. Foster's expression was grim. We need to fall back, regroup. The sound of breaking glass interrupted her. A small object arced through the cabin window, landing with a metallic clatter on the porch. Flash bang! Alan shouted, pulling Foster down behind the SUV's engine block. The explosion lit up the night, momentarily blinding. Gunfire erupted from the tree line. Suppressed weapons, professional shooters. 3 shooters, Alan said calmly, his eyes already adjusting. Staggered positions, northeast perimeter. They were waiting for us. Foster stared at him. The disoriented civilian was gone, replaced by something else, a weapon system in human form, calculating, precise. I need a weapon, Alan said, his voice now completely transformed, deeper, controlled, commanding. Foster hesitated only briefly before handing him her backup pistol. Secure the cabin. I'll call for extraction. Alan nodded, eyes already mapping. The terrain. On my mark, lay down, suppressing fire toward the largest pine, 30 degrees east. He waited for her nod. 3, 2, 1 mark. Foster opened fire, and Alan was moving, a shadow among shadows, using the brief distraction to close the distance to the cabin. He reached the porch undetected, pressed against the wall beside the door, listening. Movement inside. 2 individuals. Professional footwork. Alan checked the pistol, full magazine, round-chambered. His breathing slowed as his training took over completely. Inside the cabin, a voice spoke in accented English. They've called for backup. We need to move. What about the girl? A second voice asked. Change of plans. We take Phantom alive. The girl becomes leverage, Rachel. They were planning to use his daughter as bait. Something cold and terrible crystallized in Alan's chest. He moved without conscious thought, kicking in the door and rolling to avoid the immediate gunfire. In the split second of surprise, he identified and neutralized the first threat. 2 shots, center mass. The second attacker dove behind a couch. Alan calculated the angle, fired through the furniture without hesitation. The shooter collapsed. It had taken less than 5 seconds. Clear, Alan called to Foster, who entered with her weapon raised. Jesus, she whispered, surveying the precision of his work. Alan was already searching the bodies, finding no identification. Professional contractors, military training. How did they know we'd be here? Foster asked, checking the perimeter. Security. Breach in your organization, Alan replied automatically, his mind processing scenarios with machine-like efficiency. Or they tracked us from the station. He moved to a window, scanning the tree line. The third shooter is retreating. Heading north, likely has transportation waiting. Foster was on her radio again. Overwatch team down. 2 hostiles neutralized. Request immediate extraction and secure transport for the packages. Alan turned to her, his expression hardening. Where is my daughter, the real location? Foster hesitated. En route to a secondary safe house, 20 minutes out. Give me the coordinates. That's not protocol. Your protocols are compromised, Alan cut in, his voice deadly quiet. Someone knew we were coming here. Someone who might also know where. Rachel is being taken. I'm not asking again. Foster studied him, seeing the transformation now complete. Gone was the struggling maintenance worker. In his place stood Phantom, the operator whose skills and determination had made him a legend in classified circles. Okay, she said finally, giving him an address. But we go together. Alan checked his weapon. We need to move, now. As they headed back to the SUV, Alan's mind was operating on multiple levels: tactical assessment of their situation, strategic planning for extraction, and beneath it all, a growing awareness of who he had been. The memories were returning. Faster now, combat operations and classified missions flooding back in vivid detail. But one thing remained constant amid the chaos of his reconstructed identity. Rachel was his daughter. That bond was real, regardless of what else in his life had been fabricated, and anyone who threatened her would discover exactly why Phantom had been the most feared operator in Delta Force history. They sped down the mountain road, Foster driving, while Alan kept watch for pursuit. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We have the girl. Phantom lives, or she dies. Instructions to follow." Alan's blood turned to ice. He showed the message to Foster, whose face paled. "How did they get her?" Alan's voice was dangerously calm. "Your second team?" "I don't know," Foster admitted. "But if they have Rachel, then I'll get her back," Alan finished, his resolution absolute. "Even if I have to tear apart this entire operation to do it." The cellular photo attached to the text showed Rachel, terrified but unharmed, held in a nondescript room with cinder block walls. Behind her, partially visible, was a calendar from Parker's Corner Mart. They never left Summit Falls, Alan realized. This was a diversion. Foster stared at him. "How can you be sure?" "The calendar in the background, it's from the store." Alan was already calculating. "They wanted to draw us away from town, make us think the threat was external. But why? Because the real target isn't Rachel." Alan's eyes narrowed as more pieces clicked into place. "It's me. Someone wants Phantom back in play, and they're using my daughter as leverage." Foster swung the SUV around, heading back towards Summit Falls. "Who?" "I don't know yet." Alan checked the pistol again, a plan already forming. "But I'm going to find out." His phone buzzed again with a new message. "Corner Mart, 1 hour, come alone or she dies." Foster glanced at him. "You can't go alone, it's a trap." "Of course it's a trap." Alan's expression was resolute. "But they don't understand who they're dealing with." "And who is that exactly?" Foster asked quietly. Alan looked out at the night, his identity finally crystallizing. Not the false construct of the struggling handyman, not the cold weapon that was Phantom, but something new forged from both. "Father," he said simply, "and that makes me more dangerous than any operative they've ever faced." The drive back to Summit Falls took 20 minutes, each second stretching Alan's nerves to the breaking point. His mind worked with cold precision, analyzing the situation, formulating and discarding plans. Parker's Corner Mart, the site of tonight's earlier confrontation, was now the stage for an even more dangerous showdown. "This isn't a random criminal operation," Alan said, staring at the phone with Rachel's photo. "The timing is too perfect." Foster kept her eyes on the winding road as they descended toward town. "Watson's cartel connections could have recognized you from surveillance footage." "No," Alan shook his head. "This was already in motion. The store robbery was a test, a way to confirm my identity by triggering my training. More memories were surfacing now. Operational procedures, threat assessments, contingency plans. They wanted to see if Phantom was really dead. And now they know he isn't." Foster's expression was grim. "Your old team in Colombia, they were hunting a cartel. Leader, Esteban Diaz. Intelligence believed he had established connections with domestic distribution networks." "Watson," Alan said, the name triggering another fragment of memory. "Eugene Watson, mid-level criminal operator, expanding territories in the Northeast. We had intel he was brokering deals with international suppliers." Foster glanced at him, surprised by his recall. "Watson controls distribution across 3 states. If he's partnered with Diaz, then this isn't just about revenge for Colombia." Alan's eyes narrowed. Phantom was the only operative who ever got close to Diaz. They want information, networks, safe houses, offshore accounts. The lights of Summit Falls appeared below them as they rounded the last curve. The town looked peaceful, unaware of the danger that had invaded its quiet streets. "You can't face them alone," Foster insisted. "I'm calling in tactical support. No time, and too risky for Rachel." Alan checked his watch. 28 minutes until the deadline. Any unusual activity draws attention. One wrong move and she's dead. "So, what's your play?" Alan's expression hardened. "First, I need equipment. Then I need you to create a diversion on the south side of town. Something to draw police attention away from the store without being obviously connected. And then I do what I was trained to do." 10 minutes later, they pulled into the empty parking lot of Summit Falls storage. Alan entered a code on the keypad at Unit 23. Foster raised an eyebrow. "You remembered the code?" "Muscle memory," Alan replied, raising the metal door to reveal a nondescript storage unit. "My conscious mind forgot. My body didn't." Inside, beneath, stacked furniture and household items, he located a sealed plastic container, the combination lock open to his touch. "Insurance policy," he explained, removing the contents. "A tactical vest, 2 handguns with suppressors, ammunition, and communication equipment. Every operator maintains a contingency cache. If an operation goes sideways, if you're compromised or stranded, you have resources off the books," Foster finished, impressed despite herself. "Even with your memory suppressed, you maintained protocol." Alan checked the weapons with practiced efficiency. Some habits are too deeply ingrained to erase. He donned the vest beneath his jacket, concealing the weapons. "The diversion needs to happen in 12 minutes. Fire alarm at the motel on Highway 16 should do it." Foster nodded. "And you?" "I'll approach on foot, less visible." Alan's voice was flat, emotionless. "You were right about the counteragent. I'm remembering operational details, tactical protocols. But I still don't remember what happened in Colombia." His eyes met hers. "Why was I the only survivor? What went wrong?" "That information is above my clearance level," Foster admitted, "but rumor was your team was betrayed from the inside." Alan absorbed this information silently. More pieces of the puzzle, still not forming a complete picture. It would have to wait. Rachel came first. 12 minutes, he repeated, heading for the door. "And Foster? If anything happens to my daughter, there won't be a hole deep enough for anyone involved to hide in." The cold certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. Foster watched him disappear into the shadows between buildings, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. Summit Falls at night was quiet, streets mostly empty. Alan kept to alleyways and side streets, avoiding the occasional passing car. His mind compartmentalized, the worry for Rachel locked away where it couldn't interfere with operational efficiency, the confusion about his identity set aside for later examination. Now he was fully Phantom, moving through the darkness with practiced invisibility, every sense heightened. He monitored police chatter through the earpiece he'd retrieved from the cache, tracking patrol movements. 2 units covering the main streets, one parked at the sheriff's office where Lewis and his accomplices were being held. 10 minutes until the deadline. Alan positioned himself on the roof of the hardware store across from Parker's Corner Mart. The store was dark, but he detected subtle movement behind the windows. At least 3 individuals inside, professional positioning. No sign of Rachel. But the back storage room would be the logical place to hold a hostage. 8 minutes. Through the earpiece, he heard the fire alarm trigger at the motel. Police units were responding, leaving the downtown area temporarily uncovered. Perfect timing. Alan surveyed the store's layout from his elevated position. 3 possible entry points, Front door, watched, back delivery entrance, lightly guarded, and the roof access hatch, possibly overlooked. The neighboring buildings were close enough that he could traverse from his current position without returning to street level. 6 minutes. Movement at the front of the store, a figure checking the street, then retreating. Alan recognized the tactical pattern of a professional security perimeter. These weren't common criminals, they were trained operators. His phone vibrated. Another text message. 2 minutes early, or she dies. They were pushing up the timeline, trying to disrupt his preparation. A standard tactic to force errors. Alan remained calm, processing the new parameter. Acknowledged, he texted back, buying time. His path decided, Alan moved silently across the adjacent rooftops, dropping to a lower level at the back of the building that housed the corner mart. The delivery entrance was indeed guarded. A man with military bearings smoking casually beside the door, his relaxed posture betrayed by the alertness in his eyes. Alan approached from above and behind, dropping down in complete silence. The guard had no time to react before he was unconscious, his body carefully concealed behind trash bins. The back door was locked, but the security system had been disabled. Alan entered, moving through the darkened storage area with practiced stealth. Voices came from the main store, 2 men speaking quietly. "He won't come alone," one said. "These Delta types always have backup protocols." "Doesn't matter," the second voice replied. "He shows. We take him. He doesn't, the girl dies. Either way, Watson gets what he wants." Alan's blood ran cold, but his hands remained steady. He continued forward, using shelving units for cover, until he located Rachel. She was sitting against the wall in the employee break room, hands bound, a gag in her mouth. A single guard stood watch, his attention divided between Rachel and a security monitor showing the front of the store. Rachel's eyes widened when she saw her father. There was fear there, but also recognition, not of the maintenance worker who had raised her, but of something else she'd glimpsed behind his everyday facade. Alan pressed a finger to his lips, then moved. The guard never knew what hit him, a precise strike to the carotid sinus that rendered him instantly unconscious without a sound. Alan caught the man's weapon before it could clatter to the floor. He knelt beside Rachel, quickly removing the gag and cutting her bonds. "Dad?" Her voice trembled. "I'm here." He checked her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, staring at him as if seeing a stranger. They said you're not really a janitor, that you used to be some kind of soldier." Alan met her gaze steadily. "We'll talk about everything later. Right now I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. "Good girl." He helped her stand. "Stay behind me, do exactly as I say, and no matter what happens, keep moving toward the exit, understand?" "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." He positioned her, safely behind a shelf. "When I give the signal, head for the back door. Don't stop for anything." Alan moved toward the main store area, locating the remaining hostiles. 2 men, positions separated to create crossfire zones. Professional setup. Both were focused on the front entrance, expecting him to walk through the front door. Another. Memory surfaced. A night operation in Kandahar. Similar tactical scenario. 2 tangos, separated positions, civilian presence. He'd used distraction then. It would work again now. Alan removed a small canister from his vest, pulled the pin, and rolled it toward the front of the store. 3 seconds later, a bright flash. And disorienting bang filled the space. He moved before the sound had faded, taking down the first hostile with a precise strike to the base of the skull. The second man turned, weapon raised, but Alan was already inside his guard. A swift disarm followed by an incapacitating blow. "Now!" he called to Rachel, who darted toward the back exit. As she ran past, Alan did a final sweep, ensuring no additional threats remained. That's when he saw the device on the counter, small, black with a blinking light, a dead man's switch connected to something in the store's back room. "Rachel, run!" he shouted, sprinting after her. They burst through the back door into the alley just as an explosion ripped through the store. The force threw them forward, Alan covering Rachel's body with his own as debris rained down around them. The blast had been controlled, designed to eliminate evidence rather than level the building. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping Rachel to her feet. She nodded, shaking but unharmed. "Dad, what's happening? Who are those people?" Before he could answer, headlights swept the alley. A vehicle approached rapidly, then screeched to a halt. Alan pushed Rachel behind him, weapon raised, but lowered it when he recognized Foster behind the wheel. "Get in!" Foster shouted. Alan helped Rachel into the back seat, then climbed in beside Foster. "The store." "Controlled demolition," Foster confirmed, accelerating away from the scene. "Designed to cover tracks, not cause casualties. Professional work." In the back seat, Rachel stared at her father, confusion and fear evident in her expression. "Dad, please! Who are you?" Alan turned to face his daughter, seeing the trust in her eyes wavering. He'd kept so much from her, some of it deliberately, some because he himself hadn't known the truth. "I'm your father," he said simply. "That part has never changed, but you're also someone else." It wasn't a question. "They called you Phantom." Alan glanced at Foster, who nodded slightly. "The truth, at least some of it, was necessary now. Before you were born," he began carefully, "I worked for the government, special operations, the kind of work that doesn't go in official records. Like a spy. Something like that." He reached for her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. "There was an accident, an operation that went wrong. I was injured, lost a lot of my memories. The government helped me build a new life. With Mom, I already had you and your mother," Alan clarified. "That part of my life was real, but when I couldn't remember my military past, it was easier to become someone else entirely." Rachel processed this, her intelligent eyes searching his face. "So, you're not really a maintenance worker?" Despite everything, Alan smiled slightly. "Well, I did learn how to fix a lot of things. That part's real too," Foster interrupted, her voice tense. "We've got company. Black SUV, 2 vehicles back." Alan checked the side mirror. "Watson's people, they're not giving up." "Why do they want you so badly?" Rachel asked. "Information," Alan replied, his mind already calculating escape routes. "I knew things, dangerous things, about very bad people." Foster took a sharp turn onto a rural road heading out of town. "Safe house is compromised. Where are we going?" Alan considered their options. Edwards, the sheriff. "Law enforcement involvement will escalate this," Foster warned. "Edwards knows this county better than anyone. If we need to go to ground, he's our best option." Alan checked his weapon. "And I trust him." The pursuing vehicle was gaining. Foster accelerated, pushing the car to its limits on the winding road. "Rachel," Alan said, turning to his daughter, "in my other life, I was trained to handle situations like this. I need you to trust that training now. Can you do that?" She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "What do you need me to do?" "Get down on the floor of the car. Cover your head with your arms." He helped position her safely. "No matter what happens, stay down until I tell you it's clear." The SUV behind them was close enough now that Alan could see the driver. Another professional tactical positioning behind the wheel. "They're going to try to force us off the road," he told Foster. "When they make their move, brake hard and cut left toward the tree line." Foster nodded, hands tight on the wheel. Seconds later, the SUV accelerated, pulling alongside them. "Now!" Alan shouted. Foster slammed on the brakes and wrenched the wheel left. Their car skidded, narrowly avoiding the SUV as it shot past. The pursuing vehicle's driver tried to correct, but the momentum was too great. The SUV swerved off the road, crashing into a ditch. "Don't stop," Alan ordered, keeping his eye on the disabled vehicle as its occupants began to emerge. "Sheriff's Station, fast as you can." As they sped toward town, Alan's phone buzzed again. The message sent chills through him. "This isn't over, Phantom. What happened in Colombia was just the beginning. You have something we need, and we'll burn your entire world to get it." Alan stared at the message, frustration building. What had happened in Colombia? What did they think he knew? "Dad," Rachel's voice came from the floor of the car. "Are we safe now?" Alan tucked the phone away, focusing on the immediate need to protect his daughter. "We will be, I promise." But even as he said the words, he knew the truth was more complicated. As long as his past remained fragmented, as long as he didn't understand what Watson and his people wanted from him, Rachel would remain in danger. The memories were returning faster now, combat operations and identities falling into place, but the most critical piece, Colombia, remained shrouded in darkness. Whatever had happened there, whatever secret he was carrying, it was valuable, enough that powerful people were willing to kill for it. And until he recovered that memory, he and everyone he cared about would remain targets. The lights of Summit Falls police station appeared ahead. As Foster pulled into the parking lot, Alan made a decision. It was time to stop running from his past and face it head on, not just for his own sake, but for Rachel's. Phantom had been the most effective operator in Delta Force history because he had always controlled the battlefield, dictated the terms of engagement. It was time to reclaim that aspect of himself, to stop being reactive and take the fight to Watson. "Stay with Rachel," he told Foster as they exited the vehicle. "I need to speak with Edwards alone." Foster nodded, understanding in her eyes. "You're going after them?" "I'm ending this," Alan corrected, "one way or another." As he walked toward the station entrance, he heard Rachel call after him. "Dad!" He turned to find her standing beside the car, looking small and vulnerable in the harsh parking lot lights. "When this is over," she asked, "will you still be my dad, or will you be him?" The question struck at the heart of his struggle, the man he had been versus the man he had become. For the first time since his memories began returning, Alan felt complete clarity. "I'll always be your father," he promised. "Everything else is just details." Rachel nodded, seeming to accept this. As Alan turned back toward the station, determination hardened within him. Watson and his organization had made a critical error in targeting his family. They thought they were hunting Phantom, the ghost who had nearly destroyed their operation in Colombia. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a father protecting his child. Sheriff Edwards was waiting in his office when Alan entered, his weathered face showing no surprise. 2 empty coffee cups sat on his desk alongside a stack of files. Despite the late hour, his uniform remained crisp, his eyes alert. "Been expecting you," Edwards said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Alan remained standing. "You know, parts of it." Edwards leaned back. "When the feds showed up right after the robbery, I made some calls. Got an old buddy at the Pentagon who owed me a favor." He tapped one of the files. "Didn't get much. Everything about you is classified 6 ways to Sunday, but I got enough." "And what did you learn?" "That Alan Garrett, maintenance man and part-time hardware store clerk, doesn't exist." Edwards studied him. "And that whoever you really are, you're important enough that my buddy told me to drop this before I end up reassigned to counting polar bears in Alaska." Despite everything, Alan felt a faint smile form. Good advice. Never was good at taking advice. Edwards stood, moving to the window that overlooked the quiet police station. "Corner Mart just exploded. Got officers on scene, no casualties reported." He turned back to Alan. "You're doing?" "Not directly." Edwards nodded. "Your daughter?" "Safe, for now." Agent Foster has her. Foster? Edwards snorted. Another Fed who appeared out of nowhere the minute you took down those robbers. He crossed his arms. Want to tell me what's really going on in my town? Alan weighed his options. Edwards was intelligent, experienced, and, most importantly, removed from the tangle of classified operations and agency politics that had shaped Phantom's existence. Those men at the store weren't simple robbers, Alan began. They were sent to confirm my identity, a test. Identity as what, exactly? I operated under the call sign Phantom, Delta Force, specialized in high-risk infiltration and extraction. Edwards whistled softly. Delta, the real ghost stories. Something like that. Alan moved to the map of Summit Falls hanging on the wall. 5 years ago, I was part of an operation in Colombia that went wrong. My team was killed. I was critically injured with significant memory loss. And they told the world you died too. Alan nodded. The perfect cover. My memories were suppressed. With targeted medication, my identity reconfigured. Until tonight, Edwards finished. When you took out 3 armed men using skills a maintenance worker shouldn't have. The man in charge, Marshal Lewis, recognized me. Now his boss is coming after me and using Rachel as leverage. Edwards returned to his desk, expression grave. Who are we dealing with? Eugene Watson, heads a regional distribution network with international connections. The Colombia operation involved disrupting a partnership between Watson and a cartel leader named Esteban Diaz. And now they want payback? Alan shook his head. They want information, something they think I know from Colombia. Do you? Know it, I mean. That's the problem. Alan pressed his fingers against his temples, where the headache was returning. Those memories are still fragmented. I'm getting pieces, but not the complete picture. Edwards considered this. So what's your play? I need a secure location to regroup, somewhere off the grid where I can protect Rachel while I figure out what Watson is after. And then I end this, permanently. Edwards studied him for a long moment, then reached for his keys. Got a cabin 20 miles north up in the hills. No cell service, one access road, natural defensive perimeter. Used it for hunting before the knees gave out. He tossed the keys to Alan, who caught them reflexively. Stocked with supplies, generator for power. Not comfortable, but defensible. Why are you helping me? Alan asked, genuinely curious. Edwards smiled grimly. Because you saved lives in that store tonight, because your kid deserves better than being hunted by criminals, and because I've been sheriff here for 23 years and nobody brings their war to my town without answering to me. The simple declaration of territorial authority reminded Alan why he'd chosen Summit Falls in the first place. Small communities protected their own. There's something else, Alan said after a moment. I need access to Lewis. Edwards raised an eyebrow. The guy you took down at the store. He's connected to Watson. Might know what they're after. Interrogating. My prisoner without authorization would be illegal. Yes. Edwards held his gaze, then sighed. Cell blocks empty except for Lewis and his buddies. Deputy Martinez went for coffee. Might be gone 10, 15 minutes. Thank you. As Alan turned to leave, Edwards added, Garrett, or whatever your name really is, when this is over, my town goes back to being the boring place it was yesterday, understood? Alan nodded. Understood. The holding cells were located in the basement of the station, a small block of 6 cells, currently occupied by only 3 detainees. Lewis sat on a bench in the center cell, his arm in a cast, his face bruised from their earlier encounter. He looked up as Alan approached, recognition flooding his features. Well, well, the ghost himself. Lewis laughed, a harsh sound in the quiet space. Watson's going to be disappointed you didn't bring the girl. Alan remained silent, studying the man. Ex-military, dishonorable discharge. The kind of trained operator who found employment with organizations like Watson's when legitimate options disappeared. Nothing to say, Phantom, Lewis taunted. Or should I call you Garrett now? Nice little life you built here. Maintenance man, single dad, very touching. Columbia, Alan said finally, his voice flat. What happened there? Lewis's smile widened. You really don't remember, do you? They scrambled your brains good. What does Watson want from me? Same thing Diaz wants. Same thing everyone wants from the man who hid $50 million in untraceable accounts. The statement hit Alan like a physical blow. 50 million. The number triggered a cascade of memory fragments. Offshore accounts, encrypted access. Codes, a digital trail hidden across multiple networks. The cartel money, Alan muttered, pieces falling into place. We weren't just targeting Diaz's operation. We were seizing his financial network. Give the man a prize, Lewis mocked. Your team moved the funds before the ambush, but only you survived, which means only you know where it went. He leaned forward. Watson and Diaz have an arrangement. You hand over the access codes, they split the money, and maybe, just maybe, your daughter gets to grow up. The pieces were coming together now. The Columbia operation had targeted Diaz's financial infrastructure. Alan's team had successfully diverted millions in cartel funds, intending to disable the organization permanently. But something had gone wrong. The ambush, Alan said, more memories surfacing. My team was compromised. From the inside, Lewis confirmed with obvious pleasure. Someone gave up your position, your objectives, everything. By the time you reached the extraction point, Diaz's men were waiting. Who? Alan demanded, moving closer to the cell. Who betrayed us? Lewis's smile turned vicious. Now that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or should I say, the $50 million question? Alan's hands tightened around the cell bars. Give me a name. Not a chance. But I'll give you some advice. Check your own house before you start pointing fingers. Agencies get compromised all the time, especially when there's that much money involved. The sound of a door opening upstairs signaled Deputy Martinez's return. Alan's time was up. Watson knows you'll run, Lewis called as Alan turned to leave. He's already got men watching every road out of town, monitoring every communication. You can't hide, not with the resources he has. Alan paused at the door. I'm not running. Lewis's confident expression faltered slightly. What? Tell Watson I'll contact him directly. This ends between us. As Alan climbed the stairs, his mind worked rapidly, processing the new information. The Columbia operation had been about money, cartel finances that his team had seized, and hidden. He had been the mission commander, the one with the complete operational picture. If anyone would know where the money was located, it would be him. But the betrayal, that was the missing piece. Someone had compromised the mission, sold out his team. Without knowing who, he couldn't trust anyone associated with that operation, not even Foster. Edwards was waiting in the hallway. Get what you needed? Part of it. Alan checked his watch. I need to get Rachel to the cabin. From there, I can re-establish contact with my old networks, figure out who I can still trust. One more thing, Edwards said, handing him a satellite. Phone. Untraceable. Use it if you need backup. Alan took the phone, oddly touched by the gesture. Why are you really helping me, Edwards? The sheriff's weathered face softened slightly. 20 years ago, I was in the first Gulf War. Nothing like what you did, just a regular army grunt. But I saw operators like you, men who stepped into a darkness, so the rest of us didn't have to. He shrugged. Figure I owe you one, on behalf of all the people who never knew what you sacrificed. The simple acknowledgement of his service, stripped of classified complications and agency politics, hit Alan unexpectedly hard. He nodded, unable to find words adequate to respond. Outside, Foster was waiting with Rachel in the car, her expression tense. We need to move. Watson's people are establishing roadblocks on the highways out of town. We're not taking the highways, Alan replied, giving her directions to Edward's cabin. And we're not using any communications that could be traced. Rachel looked exhausted, fear and confusion having drained her usual vibrant energy. Alan squeezed her hand reassuringly. It's going to be okay, he promised. Is it? She asked quietly. Those men, they're not going to stop, are they? No, Alan admitted, seeing no point in shielding her from the truth. But neither am I. As Foster drove, taking secondary roads through the darkened countryside, Alan assessed their situation. Watson's organization was professional and well-funded, with enough connections to track digital communications and establish physical surveillance across multiple locations. They had planned this operation carefully, using the store robbery as confirmation of his identity before making their actual move. But they had miscalculated in one critical way. They had threatened Rachel. In doing so, they had awakened not just Phantom's tactical abilities, but a father's determination to protect his child. That combination made him more dangerous than they could possibly understand. Foster, Alan said, keeping his voice low enough that Rachel, now half asleep in the back seat, wouldn't hear. How much do you know about the Columbia operation? Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. Official briefing only. Your team was targeting Diaz's infrastructure, specifically his financial networks. Mission went sideways. Team was ambushed. You were the only survivor, with critical injuries including traumatic brain injury. The mission objective was to seize and redirect cartel funds, Alan clarified, watching her reaction closely. Approximately $50 million. Foster's sharp intake of breath told him this was news to her. That wasn't in my briefing. Need-to-know basis, Alan commented. The question is, who did know? Because someone compromised that mission, gave up my team. Do you think there's a mole in the agency? I think $50 million is enough motivation for a lot of things. Alan turned to look out the window, watching the dark silhouettes of trees passing by. When we reach the cabin, I need you to contact your superiors, request the complete Columbia file, unredacted. They won't release that, not even to me. Tell them Phantom is active again, and that the financial package from Operation Kingfisher is in play. Alan watched her expression carefully. That should get their attention. Foster's eyes widened slightly at the operation name, but she recovered quickly. And while I'm doing that, I'll be making preparations of my own. The road narrowed as they climbed higher into the hills, the headlights illuminating dense forest on either side. After several miles, Foster turned onto an unmarked dirt road that wound deeper into the wilderness. The cabin appeared suddenly, a sturdy structure of logs and stone, barely visible among the trees. Wake up, Rachel, Alan said gently. We're here. She stirred, blinking sleepily. Where's here? Somewhere safe. The cabin's interior was sparse but functional. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen area, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom with a generator-powered water pump. Edwards had maintained it well, with shelves of preserved food, first aid supplies, and other essentials. Rachel explored cautiously while Alan secured the perimeter, checking sight lines and defensive positions with automatic precision. Foster followed him outside. You really think we're safe here? She asked. No such thing as safe, Alan replied. Only defensible. As they re-entered the cabin, Alan found Rachel standing at a window, staring out into the darkness. Try to get some sleep, he told her. Take the bedroom on the right. She turned to him, hesitating. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Those men, the ones from the store. She paused, gathering courage. Have you killed people? I mean, before tonight? The question hung in the air between them. The gulf between Alan Garrett, maintenance man and father, and Phantom Delta Force, operator. Yes, he answered honestly, as part of my military service, when there was no other choice. Rachel nodded slowly, processing this. And tonight, at the store? No, they're alive, just incapacitated. Some of the tension left her shoulders. Okay, that's good. After Rachel had gone to bed, Alan sat at the kitchen table with Foster, planning their next moves. The satellite phone Edwards had given him lay between them, their only secure connection to the outside world. When Watson realizes we've gone dark, he'll escalate, Foster warned. Bring in more resources, widen the search. Let him, Alan replied, checking the weapons he'd brought from his cache. The more resources he commits, the more exposed he becomes. You're planning to take the offensive, Foster realized. Turn this around on them. Watson thinks he's hunting me, Alan confirmed. Time to show him what it's like to be the prey. Foster studied him with newfound respect. You really were the best, weren't you? Even your file, redacted as it was, the mission count, success rate, adaptability metrics, off the charts. That was another life, was it? She gestured toward the weapons he was methodically checking. Those skills don't fade, Garrett. They become part of you. Alan paused, considering. The differences between then and now aren't as clear as they once were. Since the counter-agent, since the store, it's like two versions of myself are integrating, and which one is in control? Alan thought of Rachel, asleep in the next room, trusting him despite everything she'd learned tonight. The one who remembers what matters most. He reached for the satellite phone. It's time to call in some old debts. Dawn broke over the mountains, pale light filtering through the cabin windows. Alan stood at the kitchen counter, preparing breakfast. From the supplies Edwards had stocked, the satellite phone sat beside him. 3 calls made during the night, old contacts awakened from years of silence. Operational wheels were now in motion. Rachel emerged from the bedroom, hair tousled from sleep, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She paused in the doorway, watching her father with cautious eyes. Morning, Alan said, sliding a plate of scrambled eggs and canned fruit toward her. Hungry? She nodded, sitting at the table. Where's Agent Foster? Scouting the perimeter. Alan poured a cup of coffee and joined her. How did you sleep? Not great. Rachel picked at her food. Had weird dreams about you. Alan waited, giving her space to continue. You were fighting, she said finally, but not like last night. Different places, deserts and cities I've never seen. And you looked. She struggled to find the words. Different, but still you. I'm sorry you had to learn about this part of my life this way, Alan said. I would have told you when you were older, when I thought you could understand. Did you really forget? Rachel asked. Or were you just pretending all this time? I really forgot. Alan met her gaze. The Alan Garrett who raised you, who fixed leaky pipes and made your lunch and helped with your homework, that's who I was, still am. But you're also this other person, Phantom. Yes. Rachel considered this, her intelligent eyes studying him with an intensity that reminded him painfully of Caroline. Is that why you had nightmares? Why you sometimes stared at nothing and couldn't hear me calling you? Alan nodded, surprised by her perception. The memories were trying to surface, parts of me fighting to reconnect. And now they have. It wasn't a question. Now they have. Alan confirmed. Rachel was quiet for a moment, pushing eggs around her plate. When Mum was dying, she made me promise to take care of you, said you'd need me as much as I needed you. She looked up, eyes suddenly fierce. I'm not going to break that promise, no matter which version of you is in charge. The simple declaration, the fierce loyalty of a child who had already faced too much loss, hit Alan with unexpected force. He reached across the table, taking her small hand in his. I don't deserve you, kiddo. Too bad. A ghost of her usual smile appeared. You're stuck with me. The door opened and Foster entered, her expression grim. "We've got company. 2 vehicles approaching from the access road." Alan was on his feet immediately. "Watson's people?" "Negative. Government plates. Black SUVs. Your agency?" Foster shook her head. "I didn't request backup." Alan's mind shifted instantly to tactical assessment. "Rachel, get your shoes on. If I tell you to run, head straight for the creek behind the cabin and follow it downstream. There's a fallen log about 100 yards down that will hide you from aerial surveillance. Dad, no arguments." His tone left no room for discussion. "Foster, take position by the north window. I'll cover the approach." Alan retrieved a rifle from the bedroom, checking it with practiced efficiency before moving to the front window. Through the trees, he could see the vehicles approaching slowly, maintaining proper distance for a non-aggressive approach. "Professional," he commented. "They're being careful." "Too careful for a simple pickup," Foster agreed. "Someone's expecting trouble." The vehicle stopped 50 yards from the cabin. 4 men emerged, tactical stance, alert, but not openly hostile. Alan recognized the type immediately. Government operators, likely Black Ops adjacent. A 5th figure emerged from the second vehicle. Tall, silver-haired, moving with the deliberate grace of someone who had once been extremely dangerous and had aged into something more controlled, but no less lethal. "Colonel Taylor," Alan breathed, recognition hitting him hard. Foster glanced at him sharply. "Your former commander?" "Yes." Alan felt memories crystallizing, briefings in classified facilities, combat operations across 3 continents, the man who had shaped Phantom into the weapon he became. "Friend or foe?" Foster asked, her hand on her sidearm, about to find out. Alan lowered the rifle slightly. "Rachel, stay inside." He stepped onto the porch, keeping his weapon visible but not aimed. The silver-haired man approached alone, hands visible, stopping at a respectful distance. "Hello, Phantom," Colonel Lawrence Taylor said, his voice exactly as Alan remembered, confident, authoritative, but without unnecessary bravado. "Colonel." Alan maintained his position, assessing. "Bit far from Langley." When a dead man comes back to life and starts making calls to former assets, people notice. Taylor's gaze was evaluating, professional. "You look good for a ghost." "Why are you here?" "You activated the Kingfisher protocols. That automatically flagged my attention." Taylor glanced toward the cabin. "I see Agent Foster found you. She wasn't briefed on your full history." "Neither was I, apparently." Alan's tone hardened. "Columbia, the 50 million, the betrayal that got my team killed." Something flickered across Taylor's face, surprise perhaps, that Alan knew so much already. "We should discuss this privately. My daughter stays with me. Foster too, for now." Taylor considered this, then nodded. "Your call. But you should know, Watson has escalated. He's brought in a specialized tactical team, former Russian Spetsnaz operators. They're already in Summit Falls, establishing a search grid." "Let them search," Alan replied. "I'm done hiding." "So I gathered from your calls last night." Taylor almost smiled. 3 former Delta operators converging on Summit Falls, all responding to an authentication code that hasn't been used in 5 years. "You're planning something drastic. I'm ending this." Taylor studied him carefully. "You really remember, don't you? Not just fragments anymore. Enough to know someone betrayed my team in Columbia. Enough to know the agency buried me afterward, rewrote my life without my consent. It was more complicated than that. Always is." Alan shifted slightly, maintaining tactical advantage. "What's your stake in this, Colonel? Just checking on a compromised asset or something more personal? Let's say I have an interest in how this plays out." Taylor gestured toward the cabin. "May I come in? There are things you need to know before you launch whatever operation you're planning." Alan considered, then nodded once. Weapons stay outside. Your men maintain current position. Taylor turned, gesturing to his team. One of them opened a vehicle door, and Alan watched with surprise as a familiar figure emerged. Dr. Lauren Cooper, the therapist who had been treating him in Summit Falls. Dr. Cooper is with you? Alan's voice hardened. She's been monitoring your condition since the beginning, Taylor explained. Part of the protocol. Another piece clicked into place. His entire support network in Summit Falls, Dr. Cooper, Dr. Wilson with his anxiety medication, all part of the elaborate construction of Alan Garrett's life. Inside the cabin, Rachel watched wide-eyed as Taylor and Dr. Cooper entered. Foster maintained her position, hand never straying far from her weapon. Rachel, Alan said calmly, this is Colonel Taylor. He was my commanding officer before. She nodded, studying Taylor with a measuring look that seemed far older than her. 12 years. Are you here to help my dad or take him away? Taylor looked surprised by the direct question. I'm here to provide information. What your father does with it is his choice. It better be, Rachel replied, with unexpected steel in her voice. Dr. Cooper stepped forward. Hello, Rachel, I'm Dr. Cooper. I know who you are, Rachel said coldly. You've been lying to my dad all this time. Dr. Cooper had the grace to look uncomfortable. My role was to monitor his recovery, ensure the memory suppressants were working. Effectively, to keep me in the dark, Alan added. To protect you, she corrected. The trauma you experienced in Colombia, physical and psychological, it was catastrophic. The memory suppression was as much therapeutic as it was strategic. Alan gestured for them to sit at the kitchen table. Let's cut to the chase. The Colombia operation, what really happened? Taylor and Cooper exchanged glances. Taylor spoke first. Operation Kingfisher was officially a targeted strike against Esteban Diaz's cartel infrastructure. The unofficial objective was to seize and redirect his financial assets, approximately $50 million in untraceable funds. Money that disappeared, Alan said. Yes. Taylor leaned forward. Your team successfully infiltrated Diaz's compound, secured the digital banking information, and transferred the funds. But at the extraction point, everything went wrong. Somehow Diaz knew you were coming. Your team was ambushed. Sanders, Mitchell, Ramirez, all killed instantly. You were critically wounded, barely made it to the extraction helicopter. And the money vanished. The accounts were emptied, the trails obscured. Only you knew the complete transfer protocol. When you woke up after surgery, you had significant memory loss from your injuries. Alan processed this, memories surfacing to match Taylor's account. So the agency let everyone believe I died, gave me a new identity. It wasn't just about protecting you, Cooper interjected. There was concern about the missing funds. Some within the agency believed you might have taken it, Alan finished flatly. They thought I betrayed my team, stole the money. It was a theory, Taylor admitted. One I never believed, for what it's worth. But the memory loss complicated things. If you had hidden the money, if you did know what happened to it, that information was locked away. So, rather than risk me remembering and having access to $50 million, they buried me in a false life, kept me medicated. While monitoring for any signs of the money resurfacing, Taylor confirmed, it never did. And now Watson and Diaz think I'm their ticket to finding it, Alan concluded. But I still don't remember where it went, don't you? Taylor's gaze was penetrating. Your operational instincts have returned. Other specialized knowledge too, I'd wager. Alan was silent, searching his reconstructed memories. The Colombia mission was clearer now. The infiltration, securing the financial data, initiating the transfers. But after that, chaos, gunfire, blood, the extraction point compromised. I remember setting up the transfers, he said slowly. Multiple, Accounts, different financial centers, a distributed network that would be difficult to track. He closed his eyes, concentrating. I had a contingency plan. If something went wrong, if we were compromised, a dead man switch, Taylor supplied. Standard protocol for operations involving significant assets. Yes, Alan opened his eyes. The funds would automatically move to a secondary set of accounts if I didn't enter a confirmation code within a specified time frame. Which you couldn't do because you were unconscious and critically injured, Foster observed. Exactly. Alan looked at Taylor. So where did the money go? That's what everyone wants to know. Taylor spread his hands. Not just Watson and Diaz. Certain elements within the agency have been searching for 5 years. Rachel, who had been listening intently, spoke up. You mean like a backup plan? Like how Dad always made me memorize phone numbers and meeting places in case we got separated? All eyes turned to her. Alan felt a chill run down his spine as another memory clicked into place. That's it, he said quietly. The contingency wasn't just financial, it was operational. Taylor leaned forward. Meaning? I wouldn't have trusted. The complete protocol to just my memory. Too risky. Alan's mind raced. I would have created a physical backup, something secure but accessible if everything went wrong. Where? Foster asked. Alan turned to Rachel. When did I start having you memorize emergency protocols, phone numbers, meeting places? She thought for a moment. Right after Mum died. You said it was important in case something happened to you. 3 years ago, after Caroline's death, when his suppressed operational instincts had surfaced briefly through the fog of grief and medication. The safety deposit box, Alan said suddenly. At Summit Falls First National. I opened it right after Caroline's. Funeral? What's in it? Taylor asked sharply. I don't know, Alan admitted. I just remember feeling it was important. Secure storage, access restricted to me or Rachel if anything happened to me. Taylor stood abruptly. We need to get to that box. If it contains the Kingfisher protocols, we're not going anywhere. Near Summit Falls, until I understand exactly who betrayed my team. Alan interrupted, his voice hard. Someone gave us up in Colombia, someone with inside knowledge of the operation. Taylor's expression grew cautious. There were investigations, nothing conclusive, not good enough. Alan stood, facing his former commander. Watson's people are hunting us because they think I have the key to finding $50 million. I need to know who sold out my team before I make another move. Doctor, Cooper shifted uncomfortably. There were theories. A possible breach at the embassy in Bogota, communications intercepts that Diaz might have accessed. Or someone on the inside, Alan pressed. Someone who knew the operational details. The timeline. There was no proof of that, Taylor insisted. Alan studied him carefully. But you had suspicions. Taylor held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slightly. The mission parameters were known to only 5 people outside your team. Myself, the CIA station chief in Bogota, and 3 others at Langley. Names, Alan demanded. I can't give you that. Not yet. Taylor's expression hardened. First, we secure whatever's in that safety deposit box. Then we discuss next steps. The tension in the room was palpable. Foster moved slightly, positioning herself where she could see both Alan and Taylor. Rachel watched with wide eyes, sensing the undercurrents of distrust. Dad, she said finally, if the box at the bank might help, shouldn't we check it? Her practical question broke the standoff. Alan considered their options. Going back to Summit Falls meant risk. But staying isolated wouldn't resolve anything, and if his past self had indeed left a contingency plan in that deposit box, it might contain not just the financial protocols, but information about the operation itself, possibly even clues about who had betrayed them. We'll go, he decided, but on my terms, my team, my operational plan. Your team. Taylor raised an eyebrow. You mean the 3 Delta operators you contacted? Among others. Alan's expression revealed nothing. Sheriff Edwards has been helpful. He knows the terrain, has local resources. A small-town sheriff involved in a classified operation? Taylor looked skeptical. He's earned my trust, Alan replied simply, which is more than I can say for the agency at this point. Taylor considered this, then nodded reluctantly. Your operation, your call, but my team provides backup. Agreed. Foster stays with Rachel at all times, and Dr. Cooper, Taylor asked. Alan glanced at the therapist who had monitored his fractured psyche for years, keeping him medicated and unaware. Dr. Cooper stays here. She's not field qualified. Fair enough. Taylor extended his hand. We move in 3 hours? Alan took it, the gesture formally sealing their uneasy alliance. 3 hours? As Taylor stepped outside to brief his team, Foster moved closer to Alan. You trust him? She asked quietly. Trust is a strong word, Alan replied. Let's say I'm maintaining operational awareness of all potential threats. Rachel approached, her expression serious. Dad, if we go back to town, will those men try to grab me again? Alan knelt to her level, meeting her eyes directly. I won't let that happen, but I need you to be brave and follow instructions exactly. Can you do that? She nodded solemnly. Just like our drills, I remember all the protocols. Alan smiled slightly, touched by her determination. That's my girl. As he began gathering their supplies, Alan's mind shifted fully into operational planning. The return to Summit Falls would be dangerous, but it also presented an opportunity to turn the tables on. Watson, if he could secure the contents of the safety deposit box while simultaneously setting a trap, the dual nature of his reconstructed identity was now working in perfect harmony. The protective father and the elite operator united in purpose. Watson had made a critical error in targeting Rachel. He had awakened not just Phantom's tactical abilities, but a father's most primal instinct to protect his child, and in doing so, he had created something far more dangerous than either would have been alone. The convoy moved down the mountain road in careful formation, Taylor's SUVs in front and behind, with Alan, Rachel and Foster in Edwards's sheriff's vehicle in the center. They had switched vehicles at a predetermined rendezvous point, another layer of operational security that Alan had insisted on. Bank opens at 9, Alan said, checking his watch. We'll have a 15-minute window before Watson's people realize we're back in town. Foster nodded, maintaining visual surveillance of the surrounding forest. Edwards has deputies positioned at strategic locations. Yes. Officially responding to the Corner Mart explosion, increased patrols due to public safety concerns. Alan adjusted the tactical vest hidden beneath his jacket, nothing that would alert Watson's people to our actual plan. In the back seat, Rachel sat quietly, dressed in clothes from Edward's emergency supplies, a flannel shirt several sizes too large, and jeans rolled up at the ankles. She'd pulled her hair back in a tight ponytail, her expression serious beyond her years. Remember, Alan told her, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror, you stay with Foster at all times. If we get separated, use the emergency protocols. Go to the community center, find Mr. Perez, use the phone code. Rachel recited the instructions with calm precision. Alan nodded, a surge of pride mixing with his constant concern. In the past 24 hours, his daughter had shown resilience and courage that would have impressed his former Delta teammates. As they approached Summit Falls, Alan's tactical awareness heightened. The small town appeared normal on this Wednesday. Morning, people heading to work, shops opening, everyday routines continuing despite the Corner Mart explosion that had made local news. But Alan's trained eye spotted the subtle signs of surveillance. The unmarked van parked near the hardware store, the two men casually drinking coffee outside the diner, the commercial cleaning truck that had been in the same location too. Long. Watson's people, he noted quietly. At least 6 visible operators, probably more I can't see yet. They're good, Foster acknowledged. Professional positioning, non-obvious surveillance techniques. But predictable. Alan had already mapped their patterns, identified their blind spots. They're watching the police station, the apartment, all obvious locations. They won't expect us to walk directly into the bank. Taylor's voice came through their secure earpieces. Phantom. Satellite surveillance confirms additional hostiles at the west entrance to town. Russians, based on movement patterns. 4-man team, likely Spetsnaz trained. Copy, Alan replied. Proceed as planned. Create the diversion at Point Charlie at 0855. Ahead, Summit Falls First National Bank came into view, a modest 2-story building on Main Street. Edwards's vehicle continued past it, making a loop around the block before parking in the municipal lot behind the courthouse. 2-minute window, Alan said, checking his weapon one last time. Foster, you're with Rachel. I'll make the approach. Alone. Foster nodded, her hand resting reassuringly on Rachel's shoulder. We'll be right behind you, maintaining distance as discussed. Alan looked at Rachel, momentarily caught between his operational focus and his role as her father. You okay, kiddo? She nodded, summoning a brave smile. Just get what you need from the box, Dad. I'll be fine. Alan exited the vehicle, moving with casual confidence that belied his inner alertness. To anyone watching, he would appear to be just another local running errands, his slightly disheveled appearance consistent with his known identity as the maintenance worker who had stopped an armed robbery. At exactly 8:55 a.m., a controlled explosion rocked an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town, Taylor's men creating the agreed-upon diversion. Sirens wailed immediately, emergency vehicles racing toward the site. Alan watched as Watson's surveillance team reacted, communications suddenly active, attention divided. Now, he said into his concealed microphone. He crossed the street toward the bank, timing his approach to coincide with a delivery truck passing between him and the nearest surveillance position. Foster and Rachel followed 30 seconds later, taking a different route that kept them separated but within visual contact. Alice. Washington, the bank manager, looked up in surprise as Alan entered. Recognition flashed across her face, a mixture of concern and admiration. Like everyone else in town, she had heard about his heroics at the corner mart. Mr. Garrett, she greeted him, keeping her voice professional despite her obvious curiosity. How can I help you today? Need to access my safety deposit box, Alan replied with a slight smile. Believe it or not, I can't find my spare house key. The small talk was calculated, establishing a plausible reason for his visit while allowing him to scan the bank interior. 2 security guards, 4 employees, 3 customers. No visible threats, of course. Alice led him toward the vault area. May I see your ID? As she verified his identification, Foster and Rachel entered the bank, positioning themselves near the customer service desk, with clear sightlines to both the entrance and the vault. This way, Mr. Garrett. Alice led him into the vault, retrieving his box with practiced efficiency. You can use private room 3, Alan thanked her, carrying the metal box to the designated room. Once alone, he closed the door and removed a small device from his pocket, a signal jammer that would prevent any surveillance of what he found inside. The box contained exactly what he expected, evidence of his suppressed operational instincts breaking through. A sealed waterproof pouch. Inside, a small notebook with handwritten codes, a USB drive, and several microfilm strips. Old school, difficult to hack, exactly what an elite operator would use for critical data storage. Alan extracted the contents, concealing them in a hidden compartment in his jacket. As he returned the empty box to Alice, his earpiece crackled. "Phantom, we've got movement," Taylor warned. "Watson's team is repositioning. Something spooked them." Alan thanked Alice casually, then walked toward Foster and Rachel, his pace unhurried despite the warning. "Time to go," he said quietly. "East exit, alternate route 3. They moved toward the door, maintaining civilian appearance while Alan's mind calculated threats and responses. Something had alerted Watson's people, changed their pattern. Had they been compromised? Was there another player in the field? As they stepped outside, Alan spotted it, the black SUV moving too deliberately down Main Street, the driver scanning storefronts with practiced precision. Not Watson's usual team, someone new. "Foster, take Rachel through the bookstore," he directed calmly. "Use the back exit to the alley, then proceed to Extraction Point Baker." Foster nodded, guiding Rachel across the street while Alan continued walking in the opposite direction, creating separation to divide any potential threat. Through his earpiece, he heard Taylor's team reporting positions, tracking multiple hostile elements now converging on the downtown area. Alan turned down a side street, moving with controlled urgency. The extraction plan called for regrouping at the community center, where Edwards would provide transportation out of town, but the sudden change in Watson's surveillance pattern concerned him. Something had shifted in the operational environment. "Colonel, I'm detecting a pattern change," he reported. "Watson's people are moving with different objectives, more aggressive positioning." "Confirmed," Taylor replied. "Intercepted communication suggests they've received new intelligence. They know you've accessed the bank." Alan processed this, calculating implications. "We have a leak. Or they have resources we haven't identified," Taylor countered. "Proceed to extraction. My team will provide cover." But Alan had already spotted another anomaly, a familiar figure entering the bookstore where Foster and Rachel had gone. Dr. James Wilson, the physician who had provided his memory-suppressing medication for years. "Foster, be advised," Alan said sharply. "Potential hostile entering your location. Dr. Wilson." "The town doctor?" Foster sounded confused. "Why would he?" "He's been part of my monitoring program, connected to the agency." Alan changed course immediately, moving toward the bookstore. Through the front window, he could see Wilson speaking with the owner, his posture casual, but his eyes scanning the store interior systematically. "I'm moving to your position," Alan told Foster. "Hold in place until I confirm the threat." "Negative," Taylor cut in. "Maintain extraction protocol. We don't know that Wilson is hostile." "We don't know that he isn't," Alan replied, his protective instincts overriding command hierarchy. "He's been administering my medication for years without my knowledge. That makes him a potential threat." Alan approached the bookstore from the side entrance, entering silently as Wilson moved toward the back of the store. Foster had positioned Rachel behind a tall bookshelf, her hand resting near her concealed weapon. Wilson stopped, seeming to sense Alan's presence. He turned slowly, his expression changing from surprise to something more complex when he saw Alan. "You shouldn't be here," Wilson said quietly. "They're looking for you." "Who's looking, Doctor?" Alan asked, maintaining distance. "Watson's people. Or someone else?" Wilson glanced nervously toward the front of the store. "Both. There's been a development. The operation has been compromised at the highest levels." Alan studied the doctor's face, searching for deception. "Why should I trust you?" "Because I could have reported your position already, but I haven't." Wilson moved closer, keeping his voice low. "I've been your physician for 3 years, Garrett. If I wanted to harm you or your daughter, I've had ample opportunity." Foster approached cautiously, keeping Rachel behind her. "What development?" "Diaz is here," Wilson said. "In Summit Falls. He arrived last night with a private security team. He and Watson have formed an alliance specifically to find you and recover the financial data. Alan processed this new information. Esteban Diaz, the cartel leader whose operation they had targeted in Colombia, whose funds they had seized, was personally involved now. The stakes had just increased exponentially. "How do you know this?" Alan demanded. "Because I was ordered to prepare a detailed medical history of your treatment, including all responses to the memory suppressants." Wilson's expression showed genuine concern. They're planning to use extreme measures to extract the information they need. "Who ordered this report?" "Taylor." Wilson hesitated. "I can't say more here. It's not safe." Alan made a rapid decision. "Foster, change of plans. Take Rachel to Extraction Point Charlie. I need to verify Wilson's information." "You're splitting us up?" Foster looked concerned. "Temporarily. Extraction Point Charlie has already been secured by Edwards. It's the safest location now." Alan turned to Rachel, kneeling to meet her eyes. "You remember how to get to Mr. Carson's auto shop?" Rachel nodded. "Through the alley behind the bookstore, then 3 blocks east." "Good girl. Foster will be with you the whole time." He squeezed her hand. "I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. Foster looked skeptical, but nodded. 20 minutes, then we come. "Looking for you." As they moved toward the back exit, Alan turned to Wilson. "You have 5 minutes to convince me you're not part of whatever's happening." Wilson led him to a storage room at the back of the bookstore, closing the door before speaking again. "I was brought into this program 3 years ago," he explained quietly. "Medical monitoring of a high-value asset with suppressed operational memories. I wasn't told your background, just that your medication was essential to national security. Who recruited you?" "Agent Michael Henderson, CIA. He handled local oversight of your case." Alan didn't recognize the name, which could mean either Wilson was lying or the agency had compartmentalized his surveillance program effectively. 2 days ago, Wilson continued, I received new instructions directly from Langley, comprehensive medical report, including detailed neurological responses to the suppressants. Then yesterday, I was contacted by a different handler, someone claiming higher authority, demanding access to your medical records, and you provided them, Alan concluded. I had no choice, but I included certain inaccuracies, suggested your memory recovery would be limited, fragmentary at best. Wilson met his gaze. I've lived in Summit Falls my entire life, Garrett. Watched you raise Rachel after Caroline died. Whatever you might have been before, you've been a good father, a good neighbor. I wasn't going to help them hurt you. Alan studied him, weighing his words against behavioral cues. Either Wilson was telling the truth, or he was an exceptionally skilled deceiver. What else do you know about Diaz's presence here? He's staying at the Summit View Motel on the edge of town. Has at least 8 men with him. Professional security. They've established communication with Watson's group, coordinating the search for you. And Taylor's team? Do they know about Diaz? Wilson looked confused. Colonel Taylor. I don't know that name. An alarm bell rang in Alan's mind. If Wilson was part of his official monitoring program but didn't know Taylor, that suggested the colonel's involvement might be unofficial, possibly unauthorized. One last question, Alan said. Colombia, the mission where I was injured. What? Do you know about it? Only rumors that your team was betrayed, that someone very high up in the agency was involved. Wilson hesitated. There was talk that the investigation was shut down prematurely, evidence suppressed. Alan's earpiece crackled. Phantom, be advised. Taylor's voice was tense. We've got confirmation of hostile elements converging on your position. Extraction. Window is closing. Copy, Alan replied. To Wilson, he said, if you're telling the truth, get out of town. Now, this situation is about to escalate beyond anything Summit Falls has seen. Wilson nodded. What about you and Rachel? We have an exit strategy. Alan moved toward the door. But first, I need to understand exactly what happened in Colombia. And for that, I need to talk to the one person who knows the whole story. Who? Esteban. Diaz. Alan left the bookstore through a service entrance, moving with practiced stealth through back alleys to avoid Watson's surveillance. His mind processed Wilson's information, integrating it with what he already knew and what he suspected. If Diaz was personally involved, it confirmed the critical importance of whatever information Alan possessed. The cartel leader wouldn't risk exposure unless the stakes were extraordinarily high. And if Taylor had concealed knowledge of Diaz's presence, that raised serious questions about the colonel's actual objectives. The contents of the safety deposit box were secure in his jacket. Banking codes, account numbers, transfer protocols. The financial network he had created to capture and redirect Diaz's funds. But instinct told him there was more to this situation than just the missing money. His team had been betrayed in Colombia. Someone with high-level access had compromised the operation, resulting in the deaths of 4 elite operators. That same someone had then helped construct the elaborate cover that buried Phantom and created Alan Garrett. Foster, status, he asked. Into his communications device. At extraction point, Charlie with Rachel. Sheriff Edwards is here with 2 deputies. Hold position. I'm making a detour. Garrett, don't deviate from the plan, Taylor's voice cut in sharply. The extraction window is closing. The plan has changed, Alan replied calmly. Diaz is in Summit Falls. Did you know that, Colonel? The momentary silence on the comm line was answer enough. What are you planning, Phantom? Taylor finally asked, his voice carefully controlled. Getting answers. Alan activated the locator beacon in his jacket, a signal that would be visible. To both Taylor's team and, if his suspicions were correct, to Diaz's security as well. It's time to finish what started in Colombia. This is reckless, Taylor objected. You're endangering the entire operation, not to mention your daughter's safety. Rachel is secure with Foster and Edwards. As for the operation, Alan's voice hardened. I'm not convinced we're all working toward the same objective, Colonel. Another silence, longer this time. Then, don't do anything irreversible, Phantom. Some situations are more complex than they appear. I'm counting on that, Alan replied, switching off his earpiece. He moved purposefully now, no longer avoiding detection. If his instincts were correct, Diaz's people would already be tracking him, responding to the locator signal. By seeking direct contact with the cartel leader, Alan was bypassing layers of deception and manipulation, going straight to one of the primary sources. It was risky, potentially dangerous, but after years of living in a constructed reality, of having his memories and identity manipulated by others, Alan needed unfiltered truth, even if it came from someone who had once been his target. As he approached the Summit View Motel, he spotted the security perimeter immediately. Professional, disciplined, exactly what he would expect from Diaz's personal protection team. They had already detected his approach, but were holding position, waiting for instructions. Alan continued forward, hands visible, projecting non-hostile intent while maintaining full tactical awareness. When a black SUV pulled up beside him, he wasn't surprised. The rear door opened in silent invitation. Inside sat a man in his 60s, impeccably dressed, with the weathered features of someone who had spent a lifetime navigating dangerous waters. His eyes, however, were sharp and calculating, missing nothing, revealing nothing. "Phantom," Esteban Diaz said, a slight accent coloring his English. "I've been waiting a long time for this conversation." Alan entered the vehicle, the door, closing behind him with the finality of a chess move that couldn't be taken back. "So have I." The SUV moved through Summit Falls with deliberate casualness, 2 identical vehicles flanking it in a classic security formation. Inside, Alan sat opposite Esteban Diaz, both men studying each other with the measured calculation of experienced adversaries. "You look different from your file photos," Diaz observed, his voice cultured, controlled. "Softer, the life of a maintenance man agrees with you. And you look older," Alan replied evenly. "Running a cartel takes its toll." A thin smile crossed Diaz's face. "Direct, I appreciate that." He gestured to a small bar built into the vehicle's interior. "Drink?" "Let's skip the pleasantries," Alan said. "You've gone to significant trouble to find me. Now you have me. What do you want?" "The same thing everyone wants from you, Phantom. The $50 million your team redirected from my accounts 5 years ago." Diaz leaned forward slightly. "But unlike Watson and your former colleagues, I'm willing to offer something valuable in exchange." "What could you possibly offer?" "Me? The truth about Colombia. About why your team died while you survived." Diaz's dark eyes revealed nothing. "About who really betrayed you." The vehicle turned onto the highway leading out of town, accelerating smoothly. Alan noted their direction, calculating distance to Rachel's extraction point, mapping contingency plans, even as he maintained the conversation. "You expect me to believe you'd give up that information?" "Information is a commodity, like anything else." Diaz settled back against the leather seat. "You have something I want. I have something you need. A simple transaction. Nothing's ever simple with $50 million involved." "Perhaps not." Diaz studied him. "But I suspect your interest isn't primarily financial. You want to know who sold out your team, who erased your life and replaced it with this." He gestured dismissively. "The brilliant Phantom reduced to fixing toilets and living in a 2-bedroom apartment." The casual contempt for Alan's life as a civilian, as Rachel's father, triggered a flash of anger that he carefully contained. "That reduced life has value you wouldn't understand." "The daughter," Diaz nodded. "Rachel, 12 years old. Excellent. Student, your wife Caroline died of cancer 3 years ago. Very sad." His expression remained impassive. "I know everything about your constructed life, Phantom, just as I know everything about Operation Kingfisher." The mention of the operation's code name was calculated to provoke reaction. Alan gave none, though his mind was processing rapidly. If Diaz had detailed knowledge of Kingfisher, it confirmed a high-level breach. "Then you know I was injured in Colombia," Alan said. "Lost many of my memories of the operation. Yet you kept the most valuable ones, didn't you?" Diaz smiled slightly. "The banking protocols, the transfer codes, the location of my funds. If I remembered where the money was, would I still be working maintenance jobs? Perhaps. Deep cover can require extraordinary commitment." Diaz reached inside his jacket, removing a tablet. "But recent events suggest your memories are returning. The incident at the store, your sudden disappearance, your visit to the bank this morning." He activated the tablet, turning it to show Alan footage from the Corner Mart's security cameras, his takedown of the 3 armed robbers, movements so precise they appeared choreographed. "Muscle memory," Diaz observed. "The body remembers what the mind forgets. Very impressive." "If you're so well informed, you know I still don't have complete recall of Colombia, but you have the key piece." Diaz set the tablet aside. "The contents of your safety deposit box, the failsafe you created before your memories were suppressed." Alan kept his expression neutral, though inwardly he reassessed the extent of Diaz's intelligence network. The cartel leader had sources inside Summit Falls, possibly inside the agencies monitoring him. "What makes you think I'd give you anything?" Alan asked. "Because I'm offering a fair exchange, the banking information for the name of the person who betrayed your team." Diaz leaned forward. "And because, unlike Watson or your agency handlers, I'm willing to leave you and your daughter in peace afterward." The SUV had reached the outskirts of town, continuing north on the state highway. Alan estimated they were approximately 15 minutes from Rachel's extraction point, close enough if he needed to act quickly. Why would you reveal your source inside the agency? Alan pressed. That's valuable intel. Because that particular relationship has run its course, Diaz replied, with a shrug. Assets become liabilities when they grow too ambitious, too visible. I prefer to operate in shadows. Alan considered the implications. If Diaz was willing to burn a high-level source, it suggested the relationship had deteriorated or the source had become a rival. Watson, Alan said suddenly, connecting pieces. He was your man inside. Diaz's eyes flickered with something, surprise perhaps, that Alan had made the connection so quickly. Eugene Watson never officially existed within your agency structure, Diaz corrected, but he facilitated connections with someone who did, someone highly placed, someone who provided operational details about Kingfisher in exchange for a percentage of my business. And now Watson wants to cut you out. Take the $50 million for himself. Watson has ambitions beyond his capabilities, Diaz confirmed. He believes possessing the financial data would allow him to operate independently, to expand beyond the regional distribution network I permitted him to develop. Alan processed this, fitting it into his reconstructed understanding of Columbia. So Watson's contact gave up our position, our operational timeline. My team was ambushed because of information he provided. Yes, though I believe the intention was to capture, not kill. Your team's resistance was unexpected. The casual description of his teammates' deaths sent a cold wave of anger through Alan, but he maintained his professional detachment. Getting emotional would only disadvantage him in this negotiation. You still haven't told me who Watson's contact was. Patience, Phantom. Diaz glanced out the window as they passed a roadside diner. We're approaching the exchange point, a neutral location where we can conclude our business without interference. Alan noted the change in security posture in the vehicles surrounding them, subtle adjustments that indicated they were entering a controlled environment. Through the windshield, he could see a small airfield ahead, a private jet waiting on the runway. Planning a quick departure? Alan observed. This region has become unnecessarily complicated, Diaz replied. Once our transaction is complete, I see no reason to remain. The SUV turned onto the access road leading to the airfield, passing through a security checkpoint where armed men in civilian clothing maintained a professional perimeter. Alan counted at least 12 personnel, positioned with tactical precision. Diaz's security detail was impressive, well-trained. As they approached the hangar, Alan spotted a familiar vehicle parked off to the side, a black government SUV identical to those used by Taylor's team. His suspicions deepened. You're meeting with me, Alan said carefully. It wasn't random opportunity, it was arranged. Diaz smiled slightly. Very good. Yes, certain parties felt a direct negotiation would be mutually beneficial. The SUV stopped. Beside the hangar, through the window, Alan could see a figure waiting inside, male, military-bearing, partially obscured by shadow. Colonel Taylor, Alan guessed, pieces falling into place. Among others, Diaz opened his door, stepping out with the confidence of someone on familiar ground. Shall we conclude our business, Phantom? Time is valuable, and I believe your daughter is waiting for you. The mention of Rachel was a calculated reminder, leverage, warning, and incentive combined. Alan exited the vehicle, maintaining tactical awareness of his surroundings while proceeding toward the hangar. Inside, the space was sparsely furnished. A table with several chairs, communications equipment, the professional setup of a temporary command post. Colonel Taylor stood near the table, his expression unreadable. Beside him was a figure Alan hadn't expected, Eugene Watson himself, a trimly built man in his 40s with cold eyes and an expensive suit. Quite the gathering, Alan commented, stopping at a distance that would give him optimal response. And time if needed. We're all here for the same thing, Taylor said, his tone professionally neutral. The financial data from Kingfisher. Though for different reasons, Watson added, studying Alan with predatory interest. Diaz wants his money back. The Colonel wants to close a troublesome case file. And He smiled thinly. I have my own objectives. Alan assessed the dynamic between the three men, not allies but temporary collaborators in an uneasy arrangement. Each with separate agendas, conflicting interests. Let me guess, Alan said. Watson was supposed to confirm my identity through the store robbery. When that worked, Diaz entered the picture directly. And you, Colonel, have been playing all sides, officially leading my protection detail while unofficially facilitating this meeting. Taylor's expression remained impassive. The situation required careful management. Management, Alan repeated coldly. Is that what you call setting up my team in Colombia? Management? A flicker of something crossed Taylor's face. Annoyance, perhaps, or concern that Alan had deduced more than expected. Your memories are still fragmentary, Phantom, Taylor said carefully. You don't have the complete picture of what happened. Then enlighten me. Who was Watson's contact? Who gave up my team? The three men exchanged glances, a silent negotiation occurring. Finally, Diaz spoke. Show us the financial data first, confirm its authenticity, then you get your answer. Alan considered his options. The information from the safety deposit box was secured inside his jacket, the key to $50 million that three dangerous men wanted desperately. Surrendering it would eliminate his primary leverage. But he needed the truth about Colombia, needed to understand who had betrayed his team, who had constructed the elaborate fiction of Alan Garrett's life. Not all of it, he decided. I'll provide enough to confirm I have what you want. Then I get a name. Once I verify its accuracy, you get the rest. Diaz nodded approvingly. A reasonable approach. Professional. Alan removed a single microfilm strip from his hidden pocket, placing it on the table. Account numbers for the initial. Transfers, just the first phase of the redirection protocol. Watson moved forward eagerly, but Taylor stopped him with a gesture. Authentication first. He produced a small viewer, inserting the microfilm. After studying the displayed information, he nodded. These match fragments we recovered from the original operation. It's authentic. My turn, Alan said flatly. The name of Watson's contact, the person who betrayed my team. Another silent exchange of glances. Watson looked uncomfortable, Diaz expectant, Taylor resigned. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Hayes, Taylor finally said, your superior officer on the Kingfisher operation. The name triggered a cascade of memories, mission briefings, operational approval, the last communication before everything went wrong. At the extraction point, Hayes had been directly above Taylor in the chain of command, with authority over multiple black operations across South America. Hayes was feeding information to Watson, Taylor continued, who relayed selected intelligence to Diaz in exchange for territory and distribution rights. Hayes received a percentage of profits, laundered through offshore accounts. But something went wrong in Colombia, Alan said, more pieces falling into place. The operation to seize Diaz's funds was legitimate, sanctioned at the highest levels. Hayes couldn't stop it without revealing his connection, so he compromised it instead, Watson interjected. Gave enough information to Diaz to ensure your team would be intercepted after securing the financial data, but before you could complete the transfer process. With everyone dead, the money would effectively disappear, Diaz added. $50 million. Impossible for either side to access. A stalemate that protected Hayes's position while maintaining his value to our arrangement. But I survived, Alan concluded, with injuries that conveniently included memory loss. Hayes saw an opportunity, Taylor said. With your memories compromised, he pushed for the identity reconstruction program. Officially, it was to protect you and any operational knowledge you retained. Unofficially, it buried the one person who might eventually remember his involvement, Alan finished. And the medications prescribed by Dr. Wilson ensured my memories stayed suppressed. Taylor nodded. Hayes maintained oversight of your case personally. Every report, every evaluation crossed his desk first. Alan processed this information, fitting it into his reconstructed understanding of the past 5 years. Hayes hadn't just betrayed the Columbia operation. He had orchestrated Alan's entire subsequent existence, ensuring that Phantom remained buried and the money remained inaccessible. Where is Hayes now? That's the interesting part, Watson said with a cold smile. He's been promoted, Deputy Director of Operations, Western Hemisphere. Quite the career advancement. The implications were significant. Hayes now controlled dozens of black operations across 2 continents, with access to resources and intelligence that made him nearly untouchable. So what's changed? Alan asked. Why this meeting now, after 5 years? I discovered Hayes's connection to Watson, Diaz explained. Realized he had been manipulating our arrangement, limiting my access to certain markets while allowing Watson to expand independently. And I learned Hayes was planning to eliminate me, Watson added. Clean house once he secured his new position. With you surfacing, with the potential for the money to be recovered, I became a liability. So you both want Hayes exposed, Alan concluded. You need the financial data not just for the money, but as leverage against him. While I, Taylor interjected, have spent 5 years building a case against the man who betrayed his country, his agency, and his operators for profit. The banking information you secured would complete that case. Alan studied the 3 men, a cartel leader, a criminal distributor, and a career intelligence officer, each with their own agenda, their own version of justice or revenge. Each wanting what only he could provide. And Rachel? Alan asked, his voice hardening. The threats against my daughter? A regrettable but necessary pressure tactic, Watson admitted without remorse. We needed to force the issue, accelerate your memory recovery. The cold calculation behind targeting Rachel sent a wave of anger through Alan, but he channeled it, used it to sharpen his focus rather than cloud it. Where is she now? He demanded. Safe with Foster and Edwards, Taylor assured him. As agreed, this was always meant to be a controlled operation, Phantom. Everyone gets what they need. Alan made his decision. I want Hayes, not just exposed. I want him facing consequences for the deaths of my team. That can be arranged, Taylor said carefully. With the complete financial data, we can connect him directly to the Columbia betrayal, to the cartel profits. And the 50 million returns to its rightful owner, Diaz said smoothly, minus reasonable compensation for your cooperation, of course. Alan almost laughed at the absurdity. Diaz speaking of rightful ownership for money generated through narcotics trafficking and violence. But he maintained his professional demeanor. One condition, he said. Rachel and I disappear afterward. New identities, new location. No monitoring, no medication, no handlers. A genuine fresh start. Taylor nodded slowly. I can make those arrangements. Off the books, completely secure. Then we have a deal. Alan removed the remaining microfilm strips and the notebook from his jacket, placing them on the table. The complete transfer protocol, account numbers, access codes, authentication sequences. As Taylor collected the items, Alan's hand moved to his concealed earpiece, reactivating it. Foster, status. Her voice came through immediately. At extraction. Point Charlie with Rachel and Edwards. 2 of Taylor's men arrived 10 minutes ago. Said you sent them. Alan froze. I sent no one. The realization hit with crushing clarity. They had been played. Hayes wasn't just a corrupt officer. He was several steps ahead of everyone in this improvised alliance. Taylor, Alan snapped. Did you send men to extraction point, Charlie? The colonel looked genuinely confused. Negative. My team is maintaining perimeter security here. Watson's expression changed, understanding dawning. Hayes knows. He's making a move for the girl. Alan was already moving toward the exit. All. Pretense of negotiation abandoned. Foster, immediate extraction. Hayes has compromised the operation. Get Rachel out now. Copy, Foster replied, her voice tense but professional. Moving to secondary extraction point. Taylor and Watson followed Alan outside, the temporary alliance suddenly strengthened by the common threat. Hayes must have been monitoring us from the beginning, Taylor said grimly, using us to flush out the financial data while preparing his own operation. He won't touch my daughter. Alan's voice was deadly calm. I'm going after them. My helicopter is prepped for immediate departure, Diaz offered unexpectedly. Faster than ground transport. Alan turned to the cartel leader, assessing his motives. Why help me? Because Hayes has betrayed everyone at this table, Diaz replied pragmatically. And because a father protecting his child is the most motivated operator in existence, an asset worth supporting. The simple calculation, stripped of pretense or sentiment, was something Alan could understand. He nodded once. Let's move. As they headed toward the waiting helicopter, Alan's mind shifted fully into operational mode. All personal concerns channeled into tactical assessment and strategic planning. Hayes had made a critical error in targeting Rachel. He had transformed a negotiation over money and information into something far more dangerous. He had made it personal for Phantom, and that was a mistake. No one survived unscathed. The end. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.